The female lead, Naima, has been surrounded by music since childhood. Now an adult, she inherits the house of her great-grandmother, Millie, and moves to Nashville. At a cafe, she meets Olivia, the friendly owner, who welcomes her warmly. Naima shares that she's studying ethnomusicology at TCU, focusing on mid-century urban music. Olivia fondly recalls that they used to call it R&B. She offers Naima a slice of her special potato pie for free, much to the displeasure of her husband, Dexter. Later, Naima visits the National Museum of African American Music, where she'll be interning, and immediately falls in love with the place. Bianca, who runs the museum, gives Naima a tour. Naima shares that her grandmother loved gospel music. Just then, they meet Reggie, the security guard, and after introductions, Bianca urges Naima to look around before heading off with Reggie. While exploring, Naima spots Damien, the male lead, teaching a group of students. When he misidentifies a jazz artist, she can't help but correct him. Surprised, Damien insists he's right and proposes a $5 bet. Naima accepts, informing him the loser donates the money. After checking, Damien realizes she's right, making the kids laugh. Once they leave with their teachers, he takes a moment to talk with Naima. Bianca arrives, properly introducing Naima, but before she can introduce Damien, he quickly mentions that he's just a volunteer. Bianca shows Naima the section where she'll be working, sorting through donations. Excited to start, Naima shares that she chose Nashville for her doctorate because her grandmother was from there. For her dissertation, she wants to explore why some artists succeed while others don't. Bianca believes luck plays a big role, but Naima is eager to dive into the town's musical history. When Bianca mentions that Franklin Berryhall of Berryhall Records will be at next week's fundraiser, Naima is thrilled. The next day at TCU, Naima struggles with the school brochure when Damien unexpectedly appears. He reveals he's an alumnus mentoring students, impressing her. He tries to get her number, but she insists on taking things slow after a past failed relationship. Before leaving, she asks for directions, and he offers to walk her to the music building. In class, Professor Doler encourages students to choose dissertation topics that stir their souls, making Naima reflect deeply. At the museum, Naima excitedly shows Bianca her latest find, 2 sequin dresses, but there's no information on who donated them. Bianca suggests uploading a picture to trace their history, and if nothing turns up, Naima has just scored a dress for the auction. After updating Naima on handling auction items, Bianca leaves. That evening, Naima stops by the cafe for a quick bite before heading to the event. Dex compliments her sequin outfit, but Olivia's mood shifts when she sees it, though she forces a smile. Curious, Olivia asks about the dress, and Naima explains how she found it. She also mentions discovering that Millie and her father, Thomas, were regulars at the cafe. Olivia doesn't recall the names, sharing that many people have come through over the years before stepping away to get Naima's order. In the kitchen, Dex urges Olivia to tell Naima the truth, but Olivia believes the past is meant to be learned from, not lived in. Clearly, there's history between her and Millie. At the museum, the auction is in full swing. Reggie compliments Naima's outfit, joking that she'd fit right in with the legendary music groups of the past. Naima insists they're still a force, even if today's musicians are more famous. Naima believes the old girl groups of the 60s played a crucial role in shaping music and deserve more recognition. Before she leaves, Reggie mentions the Daffodil Girls, known for Lonely as a Cloud, hinting at a great story behind them. Naima recognizes the owners of the song as the Loving Cubs and shares that the song was Millie's favorite. While browsing the auction table, Damien approaches her, trying to start a conversation, but she gets distracted when she spots Franklin Berryhall. Damien casually mentions that he sees Franklin daily since he works at the record label, surprising Naima. Eagerly, she introduces herself to Franklin, expressing her admiration for his work. He asks if she's a musician, but she explains her studies. Impressed, he offers his company's support if she ever needs assistance, leaving Naima thrilled. Later, as Naima waits for a cab, Damien tries to convince her to stay longer. He suggests heading to Olivia's, and she agrees. Over their meal, they exchange stories about their parents, and Naima asks if he's heard of the Daffodil Girls. Damien hasn't, but thinks Dex might. Calling him over, Naima asks about the group, catching Dex off guard. He dismisses them as backup singers who never made it big before quickly leaving. His reaction feels off, making Naima and Damien suspect there's more to the story. At school, Naima shares her dissertation topic with Professor Doler and asks if she knows the story behind the Daffodil Girls, believing they're connected to the hit song. Though unfamiliar with them, Professor Doler encourages her to dig deeper, suggesting it could be a strong lead for her research. Later at the museum, Bianca hands Naima a record from the auction's highest-selling pieces, revealing that Mr. Berryhall, the top bidder, wants her to deliver it personally. Clearly, she's made a good impression. Arriving at Berryhall Records, Naima is shocked to learn that Damien is Franklin's son. Upset that he never mentioned it, she assumes he's just another entitled rich guy and begins to leave. Damien quickly stops her, apologizing and explaining that people treat him differently once they know his identity. He just wanted her to see him as Damien. Understanding his point, she lets him make it up to her by showing her the sanctuary section. Naima is impressed as Damien explains that nearly all the greats recorded there before Franklin bought the studio. He points out the very mic used for Lonely as a Cloud, the song that put the label on the map. Just then, Naima spots a framed photo of the Loving Cubs, with Olivia standing in front of the stage in the same sequin dress, watching the group perform. Intrigued, they both watch a video of the performance and notice something feels off. After the video ends, Damien suggests they ask Olivia about it the next day and offers to spend the evening with Naima. She agrees, and they head to a bar for a one-man band concert, enjoying the night dancing with the crowd. Afterward, Damien shares that he's trying to sign the singer to the record label, but Franklin, stuck in his old-school ways, refuses to embrace new music. However, he feels a strong connection with Naima, pointing out that their names together form a palindrome. He believes fate led them together, and the pull is too strong to ignore. Naima agrees, leading them into a passionate kiss. The next morning, they visit Olivia to ask about the picture, but she quickly shuts Naima down and heads inside. Confused by the secrecy, Damien suggests checking out a record store that might have answers. At the shop, the owner, Tubby, reveals rumors about the Loving Cubs. Legend has it they didn't actually sing the hit song, and an old America's Top hit clip suggests the performance was staged. Curious about the real voices behind the song, Naima listens as Tubby shares what he heard from Scoots, a guitarist from back in the day. According to him, 3 backup singers were the real talent behind Lonely as a Cloud. Tubby lists several backup groups from back in the day, and when he mentions the Daffodil Girls, Naima is immediately intrigued. He explains that most records of them were erased, likely because they were the real voices behind the hit song if Scoots was right. According to Scoots, they sang backup for Chuck, a musician from that era. Grateful for the lead, Naima heads home and starts searching for Chuck's early recordings. She's stunned to find that Olivia and Millie were part of the backup singers. She rushes to Olivia's to share her discovery, but Olivia refuses to discuss it. Instead, she cryptically suggests Naima ask Franklin, leaving her even more confused. Back home, Naima sorts through Millie's old boxes and finds a William Wordsworth poetry book. Noticing Lonely as a Cloud as a poem title and the mention of daffodils, she realizes the song's inspiration. The next morning, she tells Damien, but he insists the Loving Cubs were the real singers. For Naima, this is no longer just about her dissertation, it's about uncovering the truth tied to her family. Seeing her determination, Damien agrees to ask Franklin. At the museum, Naima confronts Reggie about why he pointed her toward the Daffodil Girls. He simply wants them to get the recognition they deserve, but warns her to tread carefully. Powerful people, even those connected to the museum, wouldn't take kindly to a scandal. The secrecy around the girls is getting really intense. Damien visits Franklin at home, where his stepmother, Phyllis, answers the door. She asks about the new girl he's seeing and insists he bring her to dinner. He reluctantly agrees before heading to Franklin's office. He questions Franklin about the rumors of different groups singing Lonely as a Cloud, but Franklin dismisses them, insisting the Loving Cubs own the song. When Damien asks to see recording sessions, Franklin claims there are only audio recordings, no videos. That seems highly suspicious. Damien brings up the Daffodil Girls, mentioning Olivia, but Franklin claims he's never heard of them. If they were good, he would have signed them. The conversation shifts to Damien's music, and he hands Franklin a CD of an artist he wants to sign, confident they'll be a big deal. Franklin promises to listen, but abandons it immediately when Damien leaves. Later, Damien calls Naima to update her, apologizing for the lack of answers. Right after, Thomas calls, and Naima asks about Millie's music career. He's just as surprised since Millie never mentioned it. Determined not to let Millie's legacy go unnoticed, Naima decides to confront Franklin herself. She later visits Professor Doler, admitting she's stuck on her dissertation. She wants to expose the inequities of the 50s and 60s music industry. Professor Doler advises her to research thoroughly and submit her work by the end of the quarter. At Berryhall Records, Damien holds a session with Ruben, a musician, while Naima listens in. She compliments the song, but questions whether the backup singers are being paid. Damien insists Franklin isn't a bad person, but Naima is focused on uncovering the truth about the Daffodil Girls. Damien suggests she ask Franklin directly over dinner, seeing no reason why his father would lie. At the museum, Bianca informs Naima that Olivia's diner will close by the end of the month due to financial struggles. Naima is surprised, and Bianca invites her to join the team for dinner there. However, Naima reveals she's having dinner at Franklin's. Bianca warns her that people in town have noticed her digging, and it could end up implicating Franklin and his business. Naima insists she's not trying to hurt anyone. She just wants to understand Millie's role, suspecting Franklin knows more than he lets on. Bianca mentions the upcoming Berry Hall exhibit at the museum, cautioning her not to stir things up right before Franklin is honored. Later, Damien takes Naima to dinner with his family. Phyllis is excited to see her, and Franklin greets her warmly. When the kids pull Damien away for a game, Franklin acknowledges that Damien mentioned Naima had something to discuss and invites her to his office. Naima directly asks Franklin if it was the Daffodil Girls who sang the hit song instead of the Loving Cubs. Franklin denies knowing the Daffodil Girls, warning that such an implication could harm many people connected to the record. She reveals that Millie, Olivia, and another woman made up the group, but Franklin insists they were never signed to his label. Naima explains that Millie was the only mother she knew after losing her own at a young age, and she just wants the truth. Franklin remains firm, telling her that things aren't as they seem and advising her to stop digging. On their way out, Damien urges Naima to let it go, concerned about his family's reputation, but she argues that her own family matters too. Before they leave, she asks him to take her to the vault where the old recording session tapes are stored. She promises to drop the issue if they don't find anything. Damien reluctantly agrees, but when they check, the box for the song is empty. This only deepens Naima's suspicions. Determined to get answers, she decides to confront Olivia once again. Olivia finally shares the truth about the Daffodil Girls. She, Millie, and May created the hit song and recorded it with Franklin and Scoots back in the day. They were set to perform, with Franklin even buying them matching sequin dresses, but it never happened. Millie's father, a strict pastor, discovered what they had done and was furious. He threatened Franklin and forced the girls to sign an agreement to never speak of it again. With the song now in his possession, Franklin gave it to the Loving Cubs, turning it into a major hit for the label. Naima urges Olivia to come forward, but Olivia refuses. She insists she's had a good life and is moving out of town. As the only surviving member of the group, she has no desire to fight the record label. Damien, saddened by the truth, tells Naima he can't be part of bringing Berry Hall Records down. Too many people would be affected, and she understands, despite her frustrations. A few days later, Naima visits Thomas and tells him everything, admitting she doesn't know what to do, and he advises her to follow her heart. Meanwhile, Damien visits Franklin and reveals he knows the truth about the Daffodil Girls. He apologizes for accusing Franklin without understanding the full story, making Franklin emotional. Afterward, Franklin finally decides to listen to the abandoned tape Damien had given him. With renewed conviction, Franklin visits Olivia and Dexter to speak with them. On the day of the Berry Hall exhibit, Naima is surprised to see Olivia and Dexter in attendance, and Olivia reveals that Franklin personally invited them. During his speech, Franklin shocks the crowd by revealing the truth about the Daffodil Girls. He publicly acknowledges Olivia and Naima, then announces that he has purchased the diner building for Olivia, leaving everyone thrilled. To honor Millie and May, a scholarship fund has been established in their names, and the proceeds from the song will now go to Olivia and Naima. Franklin closes his speech with another surprise. After 60 years of dedication, he is officially handing over Berry Hall Records to Damien. The announcement stuns Damien, but he is overjoyed, and the crowd erupts in applause for the new president of the label. Later, Naima is pleased with how everything has unfolded. She tells Damien that she plans to write a book about the Daffodil Girls, and he fully supports the idea. Reggie and Olivia join them, and Naima curiously asks about Reggie's connection to the girls. Reggie reveals that as a child, he was the lookout for Millie's father whenever they secretly recorded at the studio. 1 year later, Naima's book becomes a bestseller. She gives a speech at the museum, acknowledging Thomas, Olivia, and Franklin for their support. She also thanks Damien, now her fiancé, for his unwavering love, drawing cheers and applause from the crowd.